Hi, I'm Jane Chambers and I own Solana Cyclery in Solana Beach, California. I've worked as a bicycle mechanic for the last 9 years now and started my own shop 5 years ago. What I'm going to show you today is how to do a safety check on your bike, then a basic tune-up, and how to change a flat tire. Then I'll let you be your own troubleshooter by showing you some of the common problems and how to solve them. First, we're going to do a safety checkup on the bike. This will tell you whether or not any of the major bearing surfaces, the cones on the wheels, the headset, the bottom bracket, or the cones on the back wheel, are loose. By checking the front wheel, what you will do is grab the rim and try to see if you can feel any flex in the cones. If you can, then the cones need to be readjusted. Look at your front brakes. If the distance between the brake shoes and the rims are quite wide, you're going to need to readjust your brakes. By grabbing the front forks and the down tube, you can check to see if your headset is loose. If you feel any flex in this area, the headset needs to be adjusted, which would be this here. Next, we'll go to the bottom bracket. Grab a crank arm in each hand and see if you can find any flex in the bottom bracket. If there's flex down here, then the bottom bracket is going to need to be adjusted. Then we go back to the rear wheel. We'll do the same thing with the rear wheel as we did with the front wheel. Grab the wheel, see if you can find any flex in the cones itself. Also, sometimes that will tell you whether the spokes are loose. If they're real loose, you're going to feel a lot of play back here. Then also check the brake shoes once again to see their distance between the rim and the brake shoe. And if that's spread out quite a distance, you're going to need to readjust that. If any of these parts are loose on the bike, then you'll need to get it adjusted, and a tune-up will do that. And that's what I'll be showing you how to do next. Okay, before we start the tune-up, I'm going to go through some of the tools you're going to need to use. The first tools I'll show you will be ones that you probably already have at your house. Then I'll go through some of the tools that we do use in the shop. It makes it a little easier, but it's not absolutely necessary for fixing the bike. First, we're going to start off with the hammer. The hammer is used basically to break pieces loose that have rusted together or just stuck. You don't use it with a lot of force, but it does come in handy. Then you would have a Phillips head screwdriver. This would be used on your derailleur systems. Some of them will take a straight slot screwdriver, so it's nice to have both types with you. Then diagonal cutters for cutting cables and cable housing. Next, we would have wrenches. Mainly metric wrenches would be used on the bike. The most common sizes are 8, 9, 10. This one happens to be a 10 and 12, then a 12, and a 13. Most bikes that have nutted rear wheels will also use a 15. Plus, it's great to have a crescent wrench around, a small one, and sometimes you may need to use a large one. This will, if you don't have the right metric wrench, this will fill in for you. Then the tools that we use around the shop that make it easier would be a third hand. This is for adjusting the brakes. This holds the brakes closed for you. Then we would go to a fourth hand. This helps you in adjusting the brakes once again by holding the cable taut for you. It also can be used for holding the cables taut for the derailleurs. Then we would have cone wrenches. These are used when adjusting the cones on the wheels, if there's play in the wheels there. Then we would go on to Allen wrenches. The most common size would be a 4, 5, or 6. This set happens to have more than that. Then we would go on to a chain brake tool. This is used to remove the chain and to put the chain back together with later on. Next, we would have a crank puller. This is used to pull the crank arms off of the bike, and then you can get in to grease the crank or adjust the bottom bracket set. Next, we would have tire irons, and these will be used when I show you how to change a flat tire. They're used to remove the tire from the rim. A patch kit. This is a spoke wrench. This has a bunch of different size notches in it for the different size spoke nipples, and this would be used for adjusting the spokes and truing of the wheel. Then we have cable cutters, and they're used for cutting the brakes or derailleur cables. We have a couple of different types of lubricants. This is just a spray-on lubricant used for spraying on the derailleurs or the brakes. It can also be used to loop the chain after the chain's been cleaned. And then we would have grease also, and the grease is used in repacking the bearings or just greasing the cables before you put them back into the cable housing. And the last thing you'll need will be rags, lots of old rags, because you will get dirty, so expect to do that in wiping off things and all. And I think now we're ready to start on our tune-up. Before we start the actual tune-up, first you're going to need to set the bike up on some sort of a stand. This is the type stand that you can buy in a bike shop. It holds the bike up. It also holds the front wheel from moving around on you. These cost from anywhere from about $40 to $45. But you can also make your own at home. This bike here will show that. This bike is held up by just 2 ropes, and this can be just throw a rope over a beam in your garage, tie it up around the rear saddle and around the handlebars and stem in the front. And this will hold the bike up so that you can have it so the gears are all working on it. The only problem with this is it does swing a little bit more, but it's still very easy to work on the bike this way. The first thing you're going to want to do with the tune-up is to take off the chain. This is probably one of the things you will definitely need will be a chain brake tool, and these sell for about $4. What you're going to do is put it on one of the links. It doesn't matter what link you put it on. Then you're going to screw the pin in. You want to push the pin out of the chain almost all the way out. Line it up on a pin. I'm just trying to line this up so it'll go in. Okay. Screw this in. Okay, sometimes the pins are a little bit hard in the beginning, and as it starts moving through, it's a little bit easier. You're going to line this up so that the pin coming out of the chain is just about as far out as the tool itself goes. So it would look something like this. Then unscrew the tool. So you can see the pin coming off of one side. Then you will grab both sides of the chain and just snap it apart. Then the chain is pulled off of the bike. Then you would come and you would put the chain down in some sort of container with solvent in it. That could be gasoline, kerosene, paint thinner, something to clean the chain in. After a while, after it's been soaking a while, you may want to get out an old toothbrush, lay it out in the container, and clean off all the excess dirt on the chain. Then from there, you would take it out of here and hang it up someplace to dry. After you've handled the chain, you might want to clean yourself off. Then you would go to the front wheel and remove the wheel. If the bike has quick release, you're going to want to release the brake. What that does is just let the brake shoes widen so you can take the front wheel off. This bike has quick release wheels, so I'm just going to release the lever and pop the front wheel off. If it has axle nuts on it, loosen the axle nuts and the wheel will come off. Then you would check the cones in the safety check. If you'd felt any sideways play in them, this is the time to readjust them. You take the wheel, get your cone wrenches. On this there are 2 different nuts, and they're going to be 2 different sizes. This would sit on the cone closest to the bearing surface, and this would go on the lock nut on the outside. You're going to want to loosen that, which would mean holding the wrenches and moving them away from each other. Take it apart. You want to turn the wheel this way so you can tighten the cone on the inside up. Then you would tighten the outer cone, kind of hand tight at this point. Move it back down. Put the other cone wrench back into place, and then you will tighten them against each other. Take the wrenches off, and check to see if the wheel is now tight. If there's still play, go back and redo it. If it's too tight and you can feel the bearings or it's real hard to move, go back and loosen it up. It may take 3 or 4 adjustments the first time. So, be aware of that. If you're lucky and you get it done right the first time, then it's time you can put it back on the bike. When you put the front wheel on, staring down at the wheel and the brakes, you want the wheel or the tire lined up in the center of the fork blades, and these would be the fork blades. And then tighten it back up into place. Okay, we're going to reset the quick release. Normally you'll spin the wheel to make sure that the brake shoes are still lined up, and that's it for the front. Now we'll go back to the rear and we'll repeat the process. On the rear wheel, release the quick release like you did on the front. Then don't worry about the gears on here. You're not going to do anything that's going to hurt it. If you have a nutted hub, you're going to loosen the axle nuts. This one's quick release, so we're going to release the quick release, pull back on this, and just drop the wheel off. Then you would take this off, check it like you did before. If the cones are loose, tighten them just like we did on the front one. Then it would go back on the bike. To put it back on, pull back on the derailleur, up through the brake shoes, slide it back into the frame, make sure that the wheel is centered through here, and tighten it up. Once again, resetting the quick release, check the wheel, and the wheel's set. Now we're going to go on to adjusting the brakes. We adjust the brakes. We'll grab the wrench. Okay, you start with loosening the nut on the wire, inner cable, and pull the cable loose. Pull the cable out of the cable housing, and you're going to want to grease the cable. The grease will help it slide through the cable housing a lot easier. And then feed it back through the cable housing. Place it back in place. Back over. The nut on here that's holding it in place is called an anchor nut or anchor bolt. The bolt itself has a hole in it which helps it clamp it down, so you want to get it through the hole. Then at this point you can do it 2 ways. If you don't have some of the tools I showed you, and I will be showing you again, you can take your hand and hold it closed. A lot of times it's easier if you release the quick release on the brake so it sits all the way down, pull the cable taut, and then you tighten up the anchor nut. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to get out my third hand. The third hand is used to clamp the brakes shut when you're adjusting this. Then I would grab the fourth hand. The fourth hand is going to help me hold the cable down while I'm tightening it. I'm just going to tighten down the cable. And the third and fourth hand just make it a lot easier. Goes back down. Pull this off again so it's on its own. Then you're going to want to squeeze this for 2 reasons. First of all, you're going to want to stretch the cable out a little bit normally. Also, you're going to want to make sure that the cable is still attached to the lever itself. On this, the brake shoes itself, you want them centered between the rim. If it's off or out of alignment just slightly, you're going to want to true the wheel, which is what I'll be showing you next. With this, also you want the brake shoes to be sitting with the front end pointed in towards the rim, or it's called toeing the brakes, or toeing the brakes in, so that the front of the shoes hit before the back of the shoes. If they don't, what you can do is drop a brake shoe, drop it down, grab the side with a crescent wrench and gently bend it in slightly. You don't want to bend it in hard or you can break it, but just slightly so that the front will hit before the back, and then tighten the brake shoe back up into place. What towing the brakes do is the brakes don't squeal if the front of the shoe hits before the back of the shoe. And that may be the cause of the squeaky brakes. Now we're going to go back to the rear brake. The rear brake will work the same way as the front brake did. You'll loosen up the nut, bring the cable out, re-grease the cable, put it back into the cable housing, bring it back down, and then adjust up the rear brake. After the rear brake is adjusted and the brakes are adjusted, it's time to true the wheels. The process for truing the wheels is to realign the wheels so it doesn't rub on one brake shoe or another. Let me move this bike so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Now, you may be able to see this. The brake itself, or the rim itself, is rubbing on the brake, and it's going to stop it at one point. The technique to truing a wheel, so you would get out the spoke wrench, and you want to either tighten or loosen the spokes depending on which way you want to go. If you tighten the spokes on the right-hand side, you're going to pull the wheel to the right. If you tighten the